Hi, I'm Stephanie. This is a 20-minute yoga flow. It's a stretchy flow with lots of hips and hamstring stretching, perfect for after your ride or after you've done a run. So start on your back. I'll give minimal cues to allow you to stretch and relax. Hug your right knee into your chest. Straighten your left. Take a few deep breaths. Allow that knee to fall outside towards the shoulder if that's more comfortable for your hip. Gently release that knee, grab the back of your thigh, straighten and bend your knee a few times, warming up into that hamstring. And keeping your knee straight, flex and point your foot. Add a few circles with your ankle. Really tapping into all of those tight areas. And reverse. Bend that bottom knee. Place your ankle on top of your knee for a figure 4 stretch. Thread your arms through. Hug your left knee in towards your chest. And remember, you're pulling with your arms. Keep your neck relaxed. As much as you can, stretch that tailbone towards the floor. Keeping your legs in this shape, take your arms out to the sides. Let that whole shape fall to your left until the opposite foot lands on the ground, hopefully. Push that top knee open. You should feel a good stretch along the side of the hip and the glute. Gently release that. Hug both knees into your chest. Add a rock side to side on your low back. And other side, hug the left knee in, straighten the right. And release, grab the back of your thigh, straighten and bend. And that knee does not have to be too close to you. Flex and point your ankle. Adding a few big circles in each direction. Bend that bottom knee, cross ankle over knee for your figure 4 stretch. You can rock gently side to side, pausing where you feel the best stretch in your glute. And we'll stretch our arms out for that twist. So knees go to the right. Feel as if you're drawing that left hip back down towards the floor. And encourage that top knee to open with your strength. Hug both knees into your chest. And set your feet down in line with your hips for a spinal bridge, rolling your spine up to the top. And just holding here, activating glutes and hamstrings. Continue to breathe in through your nose, out through your nose. Slowly lower, one vertebra at a time. And we'll take happy baby. Grab the outside of your feet or your big toes. Pull your knees towards your shoulders. And you can rock side to side if that feels good. I'll meet you seated. Come onto your hands and knees. Tuck your toes. First, downward facing dog. It can be a wide, short down dog. Keep those knees bent. And focus on lengthening through the spine, tipping your sit bones up towards the ceiling. Take any movements you need, pedaling out your feet. You can bend a knee, moving your hips side to side. And maybe let those heels sink a little further towards the floor. Step your feet to your hands. Wide leg forward fold. We'll just hang here in a rag doll. Grab opposite elbows and allow the weight of your body to spill over. Knees are generously bent. Plant your hands back on the mat, step back into downward facing dog. Take a big step forward, step your right foot outside of your right hand for lizard lunge. Keeping that back knee lifted for a few breaths. And then lowering to the mat or a blanket. There are many variations here. Do what feels good to your hips. You can encourage that right knee to open. If it feels good to come down to your elbows, go for it. If you're on your elbows, come back to your hands. You can either stay here or we're going to go for the bind. So my suggestions here, sit your hips back so that your hips are on top of your back knee. We're going to take opposite hand, so right hand, left foot. Once you've got the bind, pull your heel to your seat and then move it forward into your stretch. Start to kick your foot into your hand, opening up into a twist. You may feel a nice stretch in your shoulder. Gently release that foot. Plant your hands. Step back, downward facing dog. And of course, really spread your fingers, gripping the mat. Drive your weight back through your hips. Other side, left foot forward, outside of your left hand. Lower your knee when you're ready. Same variations. You can really roll onto the outer edge of this front foot and open your knee. Maybe coming to one elbow or both. I'll walk you through the bind. So if you're taking that, make your way onto your hands or blocks. Sit your hips back to grab the bind, and this might be enough. You should feel a great quad stretch in the front of that right hip. To take that further, come forward onto the front of the kneecap. And last, kick your foot into your hand, finding a twist. Be gentle. Slowly release. Plant your hands. Step back, downward facing dog. Lower to your knees and have a seat. So we're in a wide leg straddle. You can use your hands behind you for balance, for support. And we're going to do a little hip walk. So lift your left hip. It might roll forward and set it down. Lift your right hip and set it down. So just walking side to side. And here we get to practice just a little internal and external rotation in the hip joint. Might feel crunchy. Okay, we're going to do both sides, so don't worry which side you start with. So lift one hip. Okay, this is my left hip. And bend your knee any amount. This is deer pose. You're going to lean back at an angle on your arms. So this is less for the quad and more for the inside of the hip, more groin. Visualize your sit bone rolling back down towards the floor. Okay, so we're going to face the short edge of the mat. So the knee you have bent is going to stay bent, but we're going to turn towards the short edge of the mat, lining up that straight right leg with the hip. This is half hero pose. You may need to move the flesh out of the way. If your knee doesn't come all the way down, that's okay. You can be slightly lifted. Do what feels good to you. There's a progression here. Lean back on your hands. Lift your hips, tuck your tail, and set your hips back down. You should feel a really big stretch on the front of this left hip in your quad. Optional to come down to your elbows. You can also come down onto your back. Work to level out your hips, pulling your left hip slightly towards the floor. One more breath. We'll transition again, so watch closely, make your way back up. The straight leg, bend your knee and line your shin up with the front of the mat. So we're moving into pigeon with the right leg forward. The left leg is going to make its way back into pigeon. If you are not all the way on the ground, that's okay. You can stay right here. If you have a prop and you'd like to prop your hip with a block or a blanket, that does help with tight hips. Make your way onto your elbows when you're ready. Come back up onto your hands, remove any props, and we'll just sit back to where we started in a wide straddle. And that same hip walk, lift a hip. There will be plenty of rotation in your hips as you do this exercise. And other side. So I'm going to lift my right hip, turn the knee in. You just have to play with how bent you need this knee to get a nice stretch along the groin. Good. Let your hips melt. Relax into the joints. It is totally normal for one side to feel a lot tighter. Okay, transitioning into half hero. We're just going to turn and face the short edge of the mat. Again, I'm just going to take my calf, slide it out to the side. And here's the good part. Lift your hips, tuck under. And you can take this to any level that feels good. Continue to push the right knee forward to get a big stretch along the quad. Start to make your way up. The front shin is about parallel to the front of the mat. Walk that right leg back. Turn your hips forward. And take your variation of pigeon. I'll show the prop. Deep breaths. Come back onto your hands, remove your props. This time, we're just coming into a tabletop position. Open your knees, feet together, wide leg child's pose. Really crawl the fingertips forward, letting your heart melt towards the floor. Take some deep breaths into your back. And walk yourself up to kneeling. And this concludes your practice today. Thank you for joining me.